Okay, so the first question is for Kate. If we look at the value creation, why do you focus on consumption and not production? If we consider both as two sides of one metal and just take the actor decision process, would it be more effective to look on the production and marketer side? If there might be a bias that we consider production as positive, creative, and innovative, where we see consumption as negative, unsustainable, or unethical. And with that, we overwhelm consumers as the value chain is mostly untransparent. This is from Johannes Haupt.
Okay. I have a couple of answers to that. The first is I took that focus just because that's the research that I do. So I'm a social psychologist by training, so that's just the sort of sandbox that I play in. But I think it's still an important sandbox, so I don't want to just say that's my answer. And so what I think is, I'm not arguing that we should only focus on the consumer. I think that really understanding what's going on for consumers helps tell us what to do on the marketing side, right? So thinking about as marketers and all of this wonderful stuff about, how can we transform the way we're thinking about business? How can we transform systems? Really understanding what's going to drive consumers to change their behaviors has to be a part of how do we transform systems. Like it has to be like thinking about how to get people to just not just buying stuff, but how do we get them to vote? How do we get them to advocate? How do we get like all these things we want people to do to encourage change? I think we have to have consumers as part of the puzzle. And I think that's the other important piece is that I'm certainly not arguing for one side of one coin or one complicated Rubik's Cube. I think we need all angles of this problem, right? So I think sometimes I get this question of where, should we be focusing on consumers or should we just be ignoring that? And instead we should get government to change and we should get business to change. And I think the answer is yes, we need all of them, right? We need all of these things. We need all hands on deck. Some of these environmental issues that we're going to be dealing with, climate change being first and foremost for me, I feel like this is going to be a wicked, sticky, multifaceted problem. We're going to have to address it from all sides. So I think, saying, oh, we should ignore this side or we should only focus on this side, I don't think that's not what I was advocating for. I had 10 minutes. So I feel like the consumer has to be a part of, and when I say consumer, I say it's people, right? We need people to be on board. We need people to change their behaviors. So I think all of these are good, important, and they're going to be sort of, it's 6 a.m. for me. I have no words. They're all going to be very important and meaningful in terms of really enacting real change. So I think all of the above is kind of my answer.
I concur. Let's go to the next question. This is from Mubarak Ali. This is to all of the panelists. What is your opinion of the feasibility of corporations adopting sustainability goals in an ever-changing ESG landscape? What are the challenges, especially when it comes to striking a balance between sustainability goals and maintaining market competitiveness?
I'll go first.
Okay.
ESG is not the same as sustainability, and this is a misnomer. So ESG is a far, far smaller component of the whole sustainability landscape. It started with Kofi Annan hosting a conference in the early 2000s where it was meant for the finance community, basically, the phrase environmental, social, and governance metrics. And it's just been the rug has just been swept under our feet, and all this kind of woke thinking and this and all the backlash. It's quite bogus, really. So ESG refers to the metrics that a firm should use to determine kind of what its environmental impact and social impact is, and as well, investors should be looking at that to make decisions on where to invest. That's basically it. Sustainability is kind of thinking about how we can reduce consumption, how we can do this, how many how can we engage our employees. It's a much bigger landscape, as you heard from all of the speakers. So I wanted to make that point first. And the second thing is market competitiveness. I think that's the wrong, again, this is the thinking that puts us in this kind of weird situation of what comes first. If you are purpose-driven, and if you think of that as your North Star, then then your job is to create value for all your stakeholders. And if you do that well, profits will follow. That's what we believe, that's what we have shown in lots of research. And so market competitive, you don't lose by doing the right thing. I don't believe that you lose market competitiveness. And again, that's one of those false, notions that we carry in our mind. So anyway, I'll stop and let others speak.
Can I just agree with you, CB? So I just put in the chat that ESG was co-opted by the finance community to avoid focusing on real system change, as you just basically argued. And I think I would also push us to think about the word sustainability. Sustain means business as usual. And that is the problem in the context of polycrisis. We have significant civilization threatening crises that are interacting now, including climate change, including growing inequality, including species loss. And these are based on the current narratives that we accept unquestioningly. We really need to rethink the paradigms that are in use. And I'll focus on neoliberalism as one of them, but it's also human exceptionalism. It's, those are the two that I think we need to be thinking about.
Anyone else? Okay, our next question.
Maybe very briefly, I'm a bit less optimistic. I mean, I looked into the research on CDR and privacy and of course a bit ESG and so on as well. And what I've seen is that there are a lot of things to do. You can do that are no-brainers, meaning, I mean, you can put in solar panels, film on your windows, you plant trees. I mean, we plant 10,000 trees in our campus to lower the temperature by 1.5% here in Singapore. So these are no-brainers. You can do them. They're either profitable even, or they are cost neutral. That's what people do. But for example, in a CDR context here, you will not get Facebook or Google to really focus on consumer privacy and some of the ethics around algorithms and so on, because it just costs way too much money. And research, Celia and colleagues, they've done a really nice paper. They showed that greenwashing is very profitable, but doing really painful things that cost money are not being, do not have a return on investment through warm glow and brand equity and loyalty and all of these other things. So I think we will need some serious regulation to get these things done, to get firms like Google and so on to do things that actually would be painful. I mean, that's my view. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to chime in on this question? The next question is from Okai Oswald. Pardon me if I'm pronouncing that improperly. This is for Kate. What are the responsibilities of decision makers to engage their publics to behave responsibly and in sustainable patterns?
So sorry, what was it? What are the responsibilities of decision makers?
What's the responsibility of decision makers to engage their publics to behave responsibly and in sustainable patterns?
So I guess this is more like, what's the responsibility of government kind of question?
Yes.
I think I'm interpreting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, going back to what I said earlier, I think that this is a situation where it needs to be all hands on deck. And ideally, we'd be seeing government, business, and members of society all sort of coming together to encourage these sustainable behaviors. I think with government, there's sort of this ability to sort of set up systems and set up procedures and the way that we make decisions, like sort of if you could set up the infrastructure and almost to make some of these behaviors easy rather than difficult to do, right? So if you think about some of these sustainable actions we're asking people to do, a lot of the reasons they don't do it is because it's way more effortful. It's really hard. It takes like self-regulation and self-control to do some of these behaviors. But if it were set up in the system so that these were easy to do, more accessible, and even possibly maybe they could be enjoyable to do. I think thinking about the broader systems is really important. So you can kind of think of it as different levels, whereas, you know, the consumer is sort of the first level, but thinking about systems and processes is like a higher level that could sort of encourage these positive behaviors. I don't know, others probably have good thoughts on this too. Maybe CB? I don't know, you're unmuted. I don't know if that's on purpose.
Oh, no, it's not on purpose.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
Kate, I'll agree with you. Most people, I just put in the chat here, most people are not thinking systemically. They are thinking about my business. How can I grow my business? They're not thinking about changing the purpose, and that includes particularly the bureaucracies that most governments involve. And so my new book is called Catalyzing Transformation, but it's not out yet, obviously. But we really need to think about how we get everybody involved in fostering systemic ways of thinking, putting the intersection of humans and nature first, and not just thinking about business. We have to understand that business is a subset of societies, which is itself a subset of the natural environment. It's inverted in the way we currently think. And that is just it's what's creating this poly crisis, these intersecting crises that we're facing.
So what we tend to forget is that business started with barter. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
sorry, we don't have a lot of time to deal with
yeah,
this.
me neither. Yeah, we started with barter. So this narrative got usurped somewhere along the way in the quest for more goods and services. So if we can bring back business to belonging to society and society belonging to nature, as Sandra puts, and you know, Kate, as we discussed in that roundtable at SCP, none of this is beyond limits. If all of this is man-made, if all the crises are man-made, then man can undo them as well. I think that's what Atul was saying in his talk. So let's leave on that optimistic note that, you know, that the change is possible, and therefore congratulate Dana on bringing together this excellent conference, and looking forward to more work on sustainability. That's what we do, but that's what we need to see in the journals. Yeah, and it's your job, Mohammed Raziuddin Khan, it's your job and everybody's job to change that perception of business that only the economic dimension matters. I mean, it's everybody's problem. I mean, so we can't just sit back and say, well, businesses think that way. What are we doing about it? Let's ask that and start the revolution.
Excellent point. I'd just like to add that what we need is drastic change now. We can't be waiting for a very long period of time. And probably as an academic, we have to think not in terms of just minor changes of our adaptation of theory. We really have to think in terms of we were involved in the process along with the business people and the bunch of people who had a vested interest to fulfill in trying to push us towards this whole materialistic world. How can we undo it now? We got to do it. We got to be more aligned towards not necessarily, and even though we are a business professor, but we got to realign ourselves more with the society than only with the business. And I think that's very, very important. We got to think about the societal goals more than just thinking about the business goals. And that's very important.
I think that's a great way to bring this to a close. I think CV and Atul, your observations are right on target. It's going to be a big challenge for us to do that. But the more we communicate about this, the more we communicate with one another as academics, work with our students, and work with industry. We're going to need to do all of that to affect change here. So I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be here today. This has been a very entertaining, very enlightening presentation. Thank you all for participating. I'll ask the people that wrote in the chat, if you didn't get a chance to get your questions answered, please direct them directly to the people on this panel. I'm sure you'll get a response. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you, Bob. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Bob.
everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Thank you for inviting me. Fun.
Thank you. Thank you all.